So now we've covered the sort of, the base principles, as it were. We can now look at the actual FinOps life cycles. So the three these three stages are inform, optimize, and operate. Inform, this is where we are looking at gaining information, often called discovery, and terms like that will be used. And we'll go into that in some more detail. Optimizing is where we start planning and enabling the changes to happen, and operating is when we actually start implementing and maintaining the cloud deployment. But the key point to remember that this process is an ongoing and continuous process, with the aim being that each time you pass through these stages of the life cycle, you advance to a more mature posture when it comes to your FinOps function. So the inform phase, this is going to be your perfect starting point on your first cycle, as it really is a stage where you are taking stock of everything. And before you even get involved in anything, you need to get some fundamental goals and engagements, I've called it here. And these are, how is the business divided? So are you broken into cost centers, business units, departments, or teams? All of those, a combination of those. Bearing in mind different parts of the businesses might be compartmentalized differently. So getting a core understanding of that to fit that within FinOps is essential. And there might also be divisions on a geographic basis. Some of these might be for compliance reasons, for tax reasons, or anything like that. So it's also important to sort of drill down on that level as well. We're going to have to ensure that we're providing the correct level of information to the relevant teams, and we can only do that if we present the data that we've collated in a way that's relevant to them. And if we don't, we do run the risk of giving them data and information that means nothing to them, and again we're missing out on that empowerment which we've been looking for across all the different areas so far. Secondly, we also need to work out where the spend is coming from. If we can ascertain where the majority of spend is coming from, that's a natural place where we want to focus our attention on, because these are the areas where the greatest potential for savings are going to be. And finally, where is the data? And like that is it, how do we get our hands on it and to start analysing and developing some information from it? Is there a link between deployment of cloud resources and finance, and how real time is that link? And then we need to assess if there's anything that we can do to build up the speed and accuracy of obtaining this data. One point that is often misunderstood in the inform phase is it's not just looking at the data and analysing it, as to be honest, that is probably more of an accounting process than a FinOps process. What we need to do is really drive back, and it's about educating everybody in the business on this point, is we're going back to find the core issues that are driving the core issues that are driving these the results in our data analysis, and passing on this knowledge to the teams so that we can solve these going forward. Quite often these sort of these drivers for inefficiencies will be complex and will often set over multiple teams and skill sets. So there will be a need to educate and provide the stakeholders with the most accurate information to help them when they move into the optimized phase. Each time you move through the life cycle, as I said, it's an iterative process. You'll be looking for the easiest wins that you can as well, but you'll be constantly finding smaller and smaller tweaks as you go forward. But we'll look at that more in the maturity model in the later slide. So a key part to the inform phase is tagging. Tagging is going to be absolutely essential to the inform phase, as it allows us to see how our resources are going to be categorized. When you deploy your cloud environment, there will be more than likely little in there in the way of tagging, out of the box as it were, and any tagging you do have will be the remnants and leftovers from deployment or early maintenance that's been undertaken. Now these tags can be added in 3 different ways: resource level, which is frontline by the engineers directly onto the resources. You've then got a natural division and measure between subscription level, and this will then really help to segment business units or geographies, for example. And then post-build, this is where the tagging might need some further analysis or processing to help paint that fuller picture of what's actually going on. So the 3 best pieces of advice when it comes to tagging is to start early, to start simple, and to start as you mean to go on. So by starting early, we are getting the project underway as soon as we can to review the subscriptions. And the sooner you start it, the less new untagged items will be added onto the to-do pile, so to speak. Simple tagging is absolutely essential. What you don't want to do is overdo your tagging initially, because this will then you'll start to create a very unwieldy data model of no use to anyone. Additional tagging should then be driven from your key business requirements and be driven by the business going forward. And finally, by starting as you need to go on, you need to keep on top of this, and we call this tagging hygiene. And all the work being completed and added with new resources needs to be completed. Otherwise, all the great work that you've done to date will be totally undone. Thinking back to our principles, the key here is communication. We need to make sure that tagging is accurately, being done accurately and timely. And not wanting to dive into too much of a technical level, but there are a few limitations with tagging in Azure. Each resource can have a maximum of 50 tags, which is quite a lot, but I do believe some specific resources are actually limited to 15. An easy workaround of this is you are able to use a JSON string for the tags, and obviously our consultants are more than knowledgeable on how to put that into place. And there are a couple of characters you need to be careful, such as your spaces and colons, etc. So, talked briefly earlier regarding the inform phase and how you might need to do some cost allocations. And the real aim of FinOps is to work to a point where all of your cloud costs are being allocated. Now, realistically, allocating every pound and pence is unlikely. So a process of cost allocation and apportionment is required to get you as close as you can to the final picture. These costs that will be allocated will tend to be centralized or shared costs, and they may just be ones that haven't been tagged due to slip up in the process, or they might just actually be an unknown cost that no one's actually been able to work out what it is as of yet. So as you can see from the example, we've got £100,000 spend over 3 cost centres, with additional 10 grand being untagged. And following the logic in the proportional model, you can see we've taken the £10,000 and split it equally across all of those different cost centres to ensure they are taking them on at the same rate as they're consuming the base service. Secondly, we have the equal apportionment, which is where we take the cost and split it equally. And then finally, we have user defined, and this is where the unallocated costs relate purely to the products, for example, on an equal basis, and someone's come up with a rule to say that is the way we need to allocate the shared unallocated costs. In essence, this does lead to big discussions about what is the best way of allocating costs, and this is where really the role of that centralised FinOps team is there to promote the fairness and equality of such assumptions to make sure that these are being allocated fairly. So now we've sort of done the inform phase, we're going to move over to the optimise phase, and this focuses on setting clear objectives and prioritising these so that we get the best results. Normally, we'd expect a cost avoidance strategy to be better than a cost optimization strategy. In essence, the logic here is it's easier not to buy something on an ongoing basis than it would to remedy it and remold it if you have already. It's also on the stage where you set your defined levels for anomalies, etc., and how you want to govern things going forward with your controls. And following on from the inform stage, we would also be in a far stronger position to review potential cost-saving strategies that we could be getting from things like reserved instances and the like. Finally, one final point is this point is different and is often confused with a sort of standalone Azure optimization project. Effectively, such a project would be a detailed run through of all the 3 stages of the life cycle, whereas optimize within the FinOps world is really where you are taking a step back and planning on how to operate within the cloud more effectively. So stage 3, we are now into the operation stage, and we are looking at what we are really deploying here, what we've gleaned in the previous 2 stages. Here, this is where the culture really comes to play, and everyone is empowered to make the effective changes on an ongoing basis. Naturally, within here, anything that you can do regarding templating and automation really helps to assist with such a process, and also ensures the continuity that best practices are being maintained. It's also important to remember that although we are no longer in the inform stage, the process of pushing this information and real-time information, as close to real-time as we can get, into the stage to help all of the team make informed decisions is absolutely imperative to make this succeed. In doing so, you can put a benchmarking process and do so both internally and externally, and you can start linking in potential reward schemes to encourage the right behaviour. You can also use this to identify any shortfalls, which can very easily be addressed with training and upskilling the guys where necessary. And a key component which we've seen elsewhere in this approach is we can't afford to restrict any growth, innovation or development. And finally, linking back to the point of tagging, it's also important here to maintain that cloud hygiene when it comes to reviewing the tags.